First of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, subcommittee, for holding this really important hearing. And for the witnesses, thank you for being here. Thanks for putting a human element to a story that often is argued in statistics and parts per trillion and acronyms that nobody understands and terminologies that are scientific. And when we listen to your stories, obviously what we know we have is a very serious human tragedy that's playing itself out one person, one family, one community at a time. And you are the most important voices we can hear at this point, because I think Congress does need to act. And we have taken some steps. We, recently formed a bipartisan task force to address this issue across committee jurisdictions, across party lines. And has been said, this is not and shouldn't ever be a partisan issue. This is something where we have a very serious health problem that we better get serious about addressing, or the stories that you have told are going to be told for generations to come. So thank you. You're the reason that we do this. And Ms. Winstelt, from my own home state, I appreciate you being here. And I wonder if each of you, Ms. Donovan and Bucky, it's good to see you again, if you could just, obviously the personal tragedies that you have experienced are hard to imagine, but I wonder if you might just comment, like, how has this changed Belmont? And how has this changed the community you living in Cape Fear? And what difference has this made to the people in Parkersburg? How is life different than what you expected it would have been when you bought that house across the road from a Christmas tree farm?
Thank you for the question. We have a lot more trucks in the neighborhood now, I'll tell you that, and life revolves around, remember to putting water jugs out and getting whole home filters tested and knowing things like PFAS and parts per trillion and things that I never would have guessed to know. That being said, and I'm guessing everybody comes from a community that they see as extraordinarily resilient. And I think Belmont and Northern County is a very resilient community. Wolverine's an important part of that town, and I think that makes industrial waste a little trickier to deal with because they have been a good support in the community, except for this one little problem. So I think it has, though we've come together as a community, I will say that, but it makes you look at things different. On the positive, I think we've become a community that has been very pleased that we can actually make change, and that people thought that no one listened in Lansing, our state capital, or in Washington. And I think we're actually kind of surprised to see, good grief, y'all showed up. That was great. Somebody listened. So I think that's kind of been a positive, if I can say that. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Donovan?
So, my PTO now asks for bottled water donations before a party instead of baked goods. I worry about my kids getting dehydrated when I'm not around them because they're afraid to drink tap water now from any source. I endure, it's not an endurance, what it is an endurance to know that we pray weekly for my friend Tom Kennedy, who is on borrowed time, that I hear constantly my friends who are suffering from yet another illness. Those are things that in our 30s and 40s we shouldn't be doing because these are the best years of our lives. We should be going on fun trips and enjoying barbecues and not having to wonder who brought the right water for the barbecue. So there's that.
Mr. Bailey, and we see your story played out in the, I think, very important documentary that I hope everybody takes a look at, The Devil We Know. But could you tell us the rest of the story for Parkersburg?
Well, we did move to Northern Virginia, so I can't speak directly, but the conversations that I've had, my grandfather worked at Parkersburg, and he would come home sick at times with the Teflon flu, is what circulated around the plant. My mom worked in the same line, and when you worked for DuPont, you were the cream of the crop, and that mentality still goes there. And Congressman Gibbs had asked about the water district, and the initial litigation found and sought after by Joe Kiger was a letter that the water district sent stating that DuPont deemed their water levels with the chemical in it to be acceptable. And Mr. Kiger asked, why is DuPont deeming anything about my water supplies? And it's because of the stature, and I liken them and 3M and others to a bully who has taken your lunch money and is waiting for you to make a move to take it back. And it's been too long for us to do that. We can look at their internal documents, we can look at their own records and see the evidence that is tangible 50 years ago and more. And it's time for us to do that. One regret that I have that stopped me is my father passed away in 2008. And I'll never get to see my kids because I was so scared of what they were having to endure, and I waited and waited. But, you know, it's a shame what some of these families are going through, and it can't go on any longer.
Thank you so much for being here. There are a lot of hearings taking place in this town today, but I don't think there's any more important witnesses than the three people in front of us. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Congressman Kildee. Congressman Keller, you're now